Hello, I'd like to share with you today a little insight into the account number structure in Business Plus, the accounting software of the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools. All school districts within the state of Kansas, including Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools, are required to follow the Kansas Accounting Handbook as published by the Kansas State Department of Education. Within the Accounting Handbook lie the requirements for reporting expenditures in appropriate fund, function, and object code. The Kansas City, Kansas General Ledger structure provides for the appropriate accounting of all funds within an extended account structure. As of January 2015, the fully qualified General Ledger account code, otherwise known as FQA, is defined with the following structure. The first two digits of the account code indicate the fund. The next two will indicate the responsibility. Following that, the location has 3 digits. Next, function will represent 4 digits. The GPP has 4 digits, and finally, the object code has 5. Let's take a look at each one of these sections in more detail. The fund, which is the first 2 digits of the fully qualified account, will have the same general definition as currently used under Kansas law. Examples of commonly used funds in schools might include the general fund, which is 06, federal funds, which is 07, and would include your Title I funds, your priority focus funds. 08 represents the supplemental general fund, commonly known as the local option budget. The at-risk fund is Fund 13, and if you have gifts or donations, you would use Fund 35. If you have restricted funds from the state, you may use a different fund. Please contact the business office if you need assistance in determining a fund number. The next section of the account number is the responsibility. Responsibility tells us who is responsible for ensuring compliance with statutes and ensuring budget status. As a general rule, responsibility codes follow the following logic. If your responsibility code starts with 0, you report directly to the Board of Education. If your responsibility code starts with 1, for example 10, 11, 12, etc., you would be reporting to the superintendent. All divisions and departments which report to the chief financial officer's responsibility number will start with 2. All secondary education starts with 3. Human resource responsibility numbers start with 4. Elementary education responsibility numbers start with 5. The police department start with 6. School library 7. Chief of police 8. And finally schools. Schools will always use the responsibility 90. Again, if you need assistance in determining your responsibility number, please contact the business office. The third section of the account number is location. Location represents an actual brick and mortar location within the district. For schools, this number is always your school building number. Other locations within the district might include Central Office and Training Center, which is 001, North Central Office, which is 005, Transportation, which is 600, Central Kitchen, which is 700, etc. And once again, if you need assistance in determining your location number, please contact the business office. The fourth section of the account number is function. Function tells us the reason or why you are purchasing an item. For example, you may be purchasing an item to use in staff development, or you may be purchasing an item to use in the principal's office. You may be purchasing an item to use in instruction. Per state statutes, the following general categories will be used. Functions beginning with 1 always represent instruction. These would be for things where there's a direct interaction between a pupil and a teacher, or a pupil and a para-instructional aid or other learning opportunity. Any function starting with 2 represents support services. That may include student support, instructional support, general administration, support services, etc. 3s are non-instructional functions. For example, food service may fall in there. Facility acquisition and constructions always have functions that start with 4, and debt service functions always start with 5. Within the function, there may be further subfunctions. For example, within support services, the following subfunctions are defined. Functions starting with 2-1 represent student support. These are things like your nurse, your school psychologist, your social worker, etc. They're not in direct instructional interaction with the students, but they are supporting the student so that the student may learn. Functions starting with 2-2 always indicate instructional staff support services. These may include professional development, curriculum development, data analysis, etc. Functions starting with 2-3-0-0 are general administration and typically represent activities performed by the superintendent or the Board of Education. School administration, in other words, money spent for your school office, would start with a function of 2-4, central services. 2-5 includes accounting, purchasing, human resources, TIS, etc. Facility services, which includes the shop and security, start with 2-6. And finally, student transportation functions start with 2-7. The next section is the GPP. We use that if we need more detail than the other pieces can give. In many cases, this number will be 0000. However, in cases where it is necessary to define expenditures further than fund, responsibility, location, and function allow, these additional digits may be inserted to provide detail. We'll talk about the GPP more later. The final section of the account number is the object code. The object code is the what of the account number. What you are buying. As a general rule, object codes follow the following categories. Object codes beginning with 1 are salaries, 2 are benefits, 3 purchase professional technical services, 4 purchase property services, 5 other purchase services, 6 supplies, 7 property, 8 debt service and miscellaneous, and 9 transfers. You'll notice, however, that all of the object codes in the district start with 5. That's part of the account code structure. It tells us that 5 is an expenditure account. When talking about the general object code structures that the state puts out that I just talked about on the previous slide, you would want to look at the middle 3 digits. In this case, 5610. We look at the 610 and we recognize that this means supplies in the state code. Let's give it a try. Let's assume we are the treasurer at Building 407, and we'll call that SunGuard Elementary. What account number would be used if I was to purchase instructional supplies from the general fund? Our first section of the account number is fund. General fund in this case is 6. If you recall, the second section is responsibility. Schools are always 90. The next section is the location. I indicated in my example that there's a building 407. That would need to be an actual brick and mortar location. You would want to use whatever your building number is. Next, we're asking, why are we buying this? You remember the function is the why of why we buy. In this case, I said we're buying instructional supplies, so it's for instruction. The instruction function is 1,000. Again, the GPP, we will put zeros in there for now. Finally, I said supplies. So the supply number is 56100. Here you see I know who. It is SunGuard Elementary, what supplies, and why for instruction. I further know the funding source of the monies they're spending by using Fund 6. Let's try another one or two. What account number would you use? Again, we're at building 407. If I wanted to purchase supplies from Title I. I indicated earlier that Title I is included in the federal funds fund 07. Again, we use 90 for our responsibility, 407 for our location. Instructional supplies, as I indicated earlier, instruction is 1,000. The GPP, we leave blank at this moment. And supplies, as we know, is 56100. Easy enough, isn't it? Well, now let's say, what if we want to use our priority or focus monies to buy instructional supplies? Let's give this one a try. As I indicated earlier, priority and focus is in Fund 07, Federal Funds. Again, we use 90 and 407 to indicate it's SunGuard Elementary. Instructional supplies, because it's instructional, the Y would be 1,000. Skip the GPP for a moment. And what is supplies? That number is 56100. We have a problem here, don't we? Those two account numbers are exactly alike. In this case, we must use a GPP to tell the two apart. In the case of Title I monies, we would use the GPP of 9425 or 9426, 9427, etc., depending on the fiscal year we are in. For priority focus, we would use the GPP of 9495, 9496, etc., depending on the fiscal year we are in. Now you can see why the GPP can be so important to us. Important to note, it's extremely important to select the appropriate account codes when initiating a purchase request, store inventory order, etc. Failure to do so distorts the Kansas state reporting and creates additional workflow to correct the transactions. Staff repeatedly selecting incorrect account codes may be required to attend additional district-provided training. If you are unsure of the correct account code to use, contact the business office before coding any transaction. Additionally, all building principals and department directors should be diligent about carefully reviewing purchase requisitions and store inventory orders to ensure the correct account coding is used prior to approving each request. That's it. Defining account codes is as easy as 1, 2, 3. And of course, if you have a question, please feel free to call us in the business office. Thank you.